Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the historic Coral Gables Museum. What an incredible space this is, and how wonderful and lovely to see people coming in. They have some incredible programming going on through the rest of the year. Do please make sure that you support them and return to see what they're doing. I want to thank the museum very much for allowing us to be here to do this project, the Placemaker Poet, about George E. Merrick. We really are grateful to him, and to Elvis, the director, and Gianna, who's out there busy with the tickets. Thank you. I'd like to recognize a former mayor, Thompson. Mayor Thompson, are you here? She was? Okay, so Mayor Thompson is here. This is theater, so we ask you to expand your imagination. It is here. Okay. What a darling. Put the glasses on. Yes, we want to thank Mayor Lago, Commissioner Castro. They have been incredibly supportive, but also very generous to us personally for this project. So we want to thank them very much. I want to thank the Homestead Center for the Arts. They gave us a really nice grant that allowed this project to happen. And we have actually launched several projects over the last few years at the Seminole Theatre in Homestead, and then taken them from there into other communities. And one of the major principles of this project is that it is being shared with other communities. So while this is the Placemaker Poet about George Merrick, and yes, it's focused on this community of Coral Gables, our intention is to share it with neighboring communities. So communities who neighbor you, like Doral, like Westchester, like Homestead, actually get to learn and understand a little bit more about the nature and the identity of Coral Gables. And that means historically, you know. So that's one of the intentions of this project, just so you know. Last year, I retired from FIU after 41 years. Connie Crowther, who is a resident of Coral Gables here, and longtime friend but associate at FIU. She remembers those days going back, 4 decades. Anyway, I retired, I like to call it advanced, okay, from FIU, with the theater department, and really am now focused on developing What If Works, which is a community-engaged company, the work of which you're going to see tonight. One of the things I discovered stepping away from the campus, 40 years of the campus in the West, and sometimes, this game as well, is that I didn't know my community. And I have worked with dozens of teachers, theater people. So there was a bit of a shock, actually, because when I say I didn't know my community, I thought about Miami. And of course, we're working out west, and there's always that university out west, right? But 40 years, and producing plays, and directing plays, and teaching, acting, directing, and stepping out and going, I don't know my community. So I got a hold of, I didn't get the book for this reason, but I got a hold of the biography of George Merrick by Arva Moore Parks, the son of the Southwind, and I was immediately smitten and went, oh, this has to be done. So it is due to Arva, an incredibly important person who has given Coral Gables, one can't even, put it into a sum how much she's done for Coral Gables in terms of history, teaching, and just her wisdom about this community. So it is because of this that the project exists. So that is, former Mayor Thompson has now arrived. You will imagine And tonight, unfortunately, I do believe something to do with annexation business going on in City Hall. But the mayor was to be here. He had his tickets and everything, and he's held up over there, and one can only imagine what's going on in that meeting. Anyway, so without further ado, sit back and enjoy the Placemaker Poet. Thank you.
I ripple the fronds of the coconut palms as I join with the voice of the sea, the somnolent swell of the mystical songs that I breathe from the quivering tree. I hush to the cries of the wandering crane out over the shimmering lea, the murmuring moan of the faraway main and the hum of the hovering bee. Then I leap to the crest of the towering pine, and I sing of the life that I see.
What is space?
What is place?
What is the value of belonging?
What does it mean to belong?
To long.
To belong.
To a place.
To a space.
To make your own.
To
Your
own.
own.
Space.
Place.
To which we long.
To belong.
I sing of the sweep of the fathomless deep and the leagues of the wallowing trail. The Placemaker Poet. All he really wanted was to be a writer.
Reading Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Absorbing Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Devouring Emily Dickinson.
Consuming Walt Whitman.
Poets kindled in this 9-year-old's imagination. He saw the future stretch out before him. A limitless expanse of promise and possibility, but in truth, all he ever really wanted was to be a writer, to share his romantic, idealistic heart through poetry. I'm sure many of you, when you were young, had such dreams. Dreaming of how you saw yourself. Dreams that turned out to be quite different when you reached that fork in the road.
Relocation.
Resettlement.
Displacement.
Migration.
Migration. Now, we are all migrants. In a way, it can be argued that our first migration was when we left our mother's womb. A startling welcome to a brave new world. Being on the move is something to which we have all become accustomed. After all, we are the descendants of immigrant ancestors, east forced west, south forced north.
From England.
From Germany.
From Sweden.
From France.
Holland.
Poland.
Scotland.
Ireland.
The need to move, to migrate from one place to another, each of us becoming in our own ways placemakers by necessity, not always fleeing religious or political persecution, but the ravages of nature and the threat of extinction. The Placemaker Poet's ancestors, some 300 years earlier, had done just that, wrenching family and scant belongings from the jaws of a merciless Welsh environment to risk the perils of the Atlantic Ocean in search of a better life, in a land that promised milk and honey. But the saying is true.
Once you leave home, there's no turning back.
And so it was with the Placemaker Poet's father, the Yale-educated Reverend Solomon Priestley Merrick, minister of the Pilgrim Church, Duxbury, tubercular, and struggling against a harsh and relentless Massachusetts winter. Motivated by the urging of Grandpa Great Rake Fink to
Go south, my boy.
Not west, but south.
there you will find faith and fortune. Migration south was not an option. It was a necessity.
Well, I know what the future holds for you. It is a future for good and not for disaster. To give you hope. Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 11. And so, my brothers and sisters, it is with heavy hearts that Althea and I must inform you of our decision to take the children and find a more compassionate and temperate climate. The recent passing of our precious Ruth, who only recently turned 5, informed our decision. We do not want to give old Devil Winter the satisfaction of taking yet another Merrick life.
Pardon me, Reverend Merrick, but didn't Florida just suffer a catastrophic freeze that killed off all of the orange groves?
Jacob, thank you for your concern. Yes, you are correct, but we are led to believe that it happened only in the central part of Florida, and our destinies lie further south. Our hearts are saddened beyond account to leave you, but by the grace of the good Lord Protector, our future looks bright. Based on the advice of esteemed friends and fellow clergymen, we have taken our life savings and purchased 160 acres of uncultivated land near the newly incorporated city of Miami, a settlement of 300 young souls clamoring to be rescued. All humor aside, Althea and I acknowledge the risks involved. A swath of land, unknown to our eyes, whose economic potential is based solely on the advice of those who wish to see our family thrive. As the good Lord reminds us, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. We will miss you.
Sing of the spot far away in the east, where the sun rises out of the sea,
Where the flying fish plunge for their scattering feast, midst the porpoises leaping in glee.
where the sea-weeded isles in the radiant light are alive with the light of the sea.
And the cormorant coveys arise in shrill flight and go skimming along beside me.
I sing the wild song of the ocean-bred fowl in the full throbbing voice of the free. The journey by train from Massachusetts to Miami presented the zealous young placemaker poet an important lesson in patience. Interminable stops picking up passengers boarding the train for who knows what reason. Perhaps to visit pioneering relatives, or like the Merrick family, to set out in search of a new life. Faith in one hand and trepidation in the other.
Connecticut.
New York!
Pennsylvania.
Maryland.
All aboard, final destination, Miami, Florida.
The young placemaker poet sat between two conflicting states of being. A state of awe as images flashed past him at the speed of light, and a state of numbing frustration as the 3-day journey began to strain his patience. Yet, unbeknownst to the placemaker poet, this 1,500-mile migration, much of it through open, uninhabited, hostile, and unmapped territory, was to enrich his imagination. An imagination that had been nurtured on the adventure novels of Kurt Monroe.
Reading and staring.
Reading and staring.
Reading and staring.
Reading and staring.
Reading imagining.
Reading imagining.
Reading imagining.
Reading imagining.
Reading and dreaming.
Reading and dreaming.
Reading and dreaming.
Reading and dreaming.
Reading questioning.
Reading questioning.
Reading questioning.
Reading and questioning.
What was to come? What would this adventure to a sun-drenched and enchanting place have in store? Why, it was an odyssey Homer himself could never have imagined.
Virginia.
North Carolina.
South Carolina.
Georgia.
And while his eyes grew wider and his mind more spellbound with daydreaming, Reverend Solomon Priestley Merrick sat stoic and austere, eyes fixed with unflinching resolve.
Son, there is no room for romantic notions. We are not on some adventure with Marco Polo. You are reminded to keep your imagination in check, Master Merrick. God has formed Florida in the shape of a forefinger, pointing toward our destination. Ours is a passage of life, born of necessity. So David returned. Saul returned from pursuing David and went to see the Philistines, and therefore they called that place the Rock of Escape. Book of Samuel, chapter 23, verse 28. The relentless weather of Massachusetts was our King David, against which we had to do battle in order to survive. Florida will be our rock of escape. Little did we suspect when we arrived.
Quarantine.
Quarantine! Father and son had arrived in the midst of a strict quarantine. Yellow fever had struck with no known medical cure. Not even Grandpa Fink's legendary magic oil could relieve the suffering. Even the young Placemaker Poet could find no lyricism in the human tragedy. People were dying in multitudes. The journey was aborted near the Loxahatchee River, forcing the final leg of the southerly migration to be completed by water down the Biscayne Bay to a small settlement by the name of Coconut Grove. The young Placemaker Poet finally sets foot on Dade County soil, and as if facing some great unknown of his fear, from deep within a sentient place, the arms of a 13-year-old boy embrace the winds of change.
I sing of far isles in the crystalline blue, where the air ever whispers of May.
Where the seas ever glow with a phosphorant hue round the ships that are waiting all the way.
Where the skies are ablaze with a slumberous haze, and the clouds, like the barks of a fae,
Are hanging becalmed in an odorous maze, like the sails on an enchanted bay.
And the land is sunk
deep in a languishing sleep.
In dreams of an age.
far away.
We walked for what seemed like an eternity to our 160-acre home, 4 miles on foot from Coconut Grove. Hardly any dirt roads or lanes, just wild, untamed backwoods. And then we saw it. The house. Or should I say, the cabin. The hut. The shack. To be quite honest, we weren't quite sure what to call it. Never, in our wildest dreams, had we ever conjured this. Suddenly life in the frigid north seemed a lot more appealing. But as my father liked to remind us,
Once you depart,
There's no turning back.
and so it was all shoulders to the wheel.
Pioneering.
homesteading,
Hops,
Crackers,
Yankees.
whites,
black,
Bahamian,
Negroes.
some to build,
some to farm,
some to retire.
Some to invest.
but most traveled south,
Ready to work.
Come
Tim Gibson.
George Merrick.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, me too.
You all got yourself some mighty fine land here. Your low sink, glaze for the vegetables, hierarchy ground for citrus. Y'all been welcome here.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, why don't I ask my mother to invite you all over to our place for supper? Now, she makes a tasty chicken pot pie and gravy.
Yeah, we sure like that. Don't recall Mom cooking pot pie before. But she made a right fine crab piece and rice with a nice spicy sauce too. And Johnny cake. I'm sure you love our Johnny cake. Well, better get back to it. Got to grab another anchor for sunset.
Hey! What do your hands look like?
What you mean?
Well, do they look like mine?
Oh boy, you soon have a mountain range right there. Calluses, scars, and all. You do a lot of reading and writing?
Yeah, how'd you... well, I'm learning. I'm catching up. I think I'm gonna learn to love Florida.
I like him.
As the young placemaker poet watched his newfound friend run off, he imagined the meager wooden shack where he and his siblings struggled in poverty. It was at times such as this that deep down inside he felt sad. He didn't know when, he didn't know how, but he knew that he would have to make something to improve their lives. Yet, barely a month into his new, what'd you call this? What would you call it? Working out in the fields? Adventurous lifestyle? Another milestone migration was to take place. A migration in which the whole world participated.
The turn of the century. Industry.
Enterprise.
Aspiration.
Energy.
A new dawn.
A new age.
A new identity.
Of the young placemaker poet was swept up by the birth of a new century, even here in this barren and barely conceived Magic City, and with Flagler's Railroad inching ever closer into Dade County. It was ready to be completed in just 2 years, and as luck would have it, come right by the Merrick homestead.
Mr. Merrick, your brand new typewriter.
Shadia. There are some things in life that even a new century can't replace.
Apple, Meaty, Helen.
And while our placemaker poet was kept plenty busy by his father on the plantation, his mother, Althea, was busy establishing Guavonia, a school she named on account of the acres of guava trees. See, she had realized the urgent need to educate the isolated homesteader children that were scattered throughout the area. But the school board thought that they insisted that 10 students would be needed before she could do that. It always comes down to numbers, doesn't it?
We already have 3 of the 4 Merrick children.
We only need another 6.
Please, ma'am, don't you have a young son and daughter at home who needs educating?
Well, excuse me, sir, but could you imagine what would happen if your children set out in the world without a proper education?
Shameful.
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 Well, she did it. Aided in no small part by fanatical Finkism, Althea's recruitment efforts paid off. With 12 children, able and possibly willing, Guavonia was up and running. However, you may notice that a certain placemaker poet is not present. As eager as he was to return to school, to continue filling his head with history, geography, artists, and poets, and philosophers, George's education was to be put on hold by this darn ultimatum.
Only when the groves begin to bear, son. Only when the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, trees falling.
There's a phrase we heard so often in the days not long ago, and the words has always softened, bring the ache such memories know. I can hear my father saying,
when the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, tree falling.
There's the rooms of our old cabin. There's our parents talking slow, and a hush of childish gabbing as we hear so grave and low.
Yes, we will.
Those brave words my father sang.
When the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, tree falling.
In the days when all was labor, from the morn past evening sun, nor the time to even neighbor, not an hour for any fun.
But we will.
My father saying,
When the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, tree falling. Oh, that brave and hopeful saying, and that kept our hearts alive, when his iron willpower stayed, only kept us in the dry. Those hardening words my father's saying.
When the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, tree falling!
when the freeze and drowned out got us, sometimes then, as I recall, there was only one thing brought us out the dark and hopeless pall.
Still, the trees.
My father saying,
When the groves begin to bear.
Heads above, tree falling.
So, through thick and brunt of lane, for the future, here and then, Ian himself he nerved by saying, o'er and o'er and o'er again, those brave words, my father saying.
When the groves begin to bear.
and the pang to know that after,
All these hopes so long deferred.
when came chance for joy and laughter,
He never shared the boons conferred.
He was not here to prove his saying.
when the groves began to bear.
Despite 7 years of hard scrabble labor, poetry lived on in the heart of a Placemaker Poet. He continued to read and write, often in solitude late at night, concealed from the disapproving eye of his autocratic father. Besides land-grubbing and rocking the road, the young Placemaker Poet was tasked daily with driving a produce-laden cart to Miami. Rising at 2 in the morning with a novel stuffed in his back pocket, he would hitch up Maud the mule and set off on the 7-mile, 4-hour journey. As Miami's population exploded and demand for fruits and vegetables increased, the Merrick plantation expanded from 160 to 560 acres. Those early days of peddling were to mentor the young Placemaker Poet in the art of salesmanship.
Hey, George! Here!
Hey, George! Catch!
hey George, line drive on the left.
Hey George, fastball on your right.
Okay. Good morning. So who would like a nice ripe red pepper? For the dumpling stew? Anyone? Anyone? No one wants a pepper? It's fresh. Yes, sir. You right here. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And who would like grapefruit with their grits in the morning? Yes. Oh, you, ma'am. Right here, ma'am. Coming right up. Thank you. Thank you so much. And how about a nice onion to bring out the taste? Yes? A nice onion? No one likes onion. Yes, you, ma'am. Oh, ma'am, thank you. You sure do look like a lady who likes her onions. And how about a nice shiny eggplant? Oh, for that surprise romantic meal. My reverend father was thrifty about many things in life, but he never neglected those less fortunate.
What we don't sell today, son, we give to those in need tomorrow.
It remained an unwritten family policy. Oh, you heard right. the sound of a successful cash register. And though it cost him a good part of his health, the Reverend's generosity returned 1,000-fold. And as for the Placemaker Poet, well, years of land grubbing and rocking the road, peddling, hawking, and selling produce paid off. Profits mounted as Flagler's Railroad sped into Dade County, allowing cartloads of produce to leave Florida, bound for distant markets.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Georgie. Happy birthday to you.
$1,000 and the keys to the door. My father was generous. $1,000 for 7 years lost in servitude. I felt closer in kinship to my fellow workers than ever before. Yet I had $1,000 and my freedom. They, $1 a day and continual struggle. As an increase in land came an increased opportunity for Bahamian Negroes who arrived in droves, offering in return their time-honored farming traditions and construction know-how. At 21, the Placemaker Poet recognized the contribution they had made to the success of his family's enterprise. The irony of his own release from 7 years of family servitude struck him hard. He knew that the future must bring change to their lives. It is because of you that the groves began to bear.
I'm proud to work with you, Mr. Merrick. We are all proud to be here with you and your family. Now you go off and make a success of yourself. We will be here when you are ready to return.
He was given the keys to the gates of education. Rollins College, free at last.
While at first he felt like a green, untried boy.
Raw from the pines and rocks.
And full of inferiority complexes.
More than any freshman who entered Rollins.
Yet he was eager for learning. He plunged himself headfirst into his studies. Fiction and poetry gushed from him like a river breaking its banks. I had found a voice I had never heard before. My peers were listening. My professors were taking note. I was on my way to finding my true potential, yet the ambitions of the Placemaker Poet were put on hold by the commands of a disapproving father. The Placemaker Poet was instantly dispatched to
New York, New York.
Was there ever a time so exhilarating, so thrilling? His head was swimming with the life and inexhaustible vitality of this great city. No one seemed to sleep. Endless industry and stamina, teeming with ideas and innovations. Migrants pouring through the gates of Ellis Island, the buildings scraping the sky, proud, implacable, towering over a world of intangibles below. Shooting through the clouds like desperate contestants, eager to claim their bragging rights. How was it possible that this city did not sink from the sheer weight of its buildings?
The Flatiron Building.
The Macy's Building.
The Singer Building.
The New York Law School.
The Fulton Building. Lower Manhattan. New York's financial district, New York Law School. Situated between the 7th and the 11th floors, here, the Placemaker Poet begrudgingly took his first steps in shaping his life for a future in business.
Civil procedure.
Constitutional law.
Criminal law.
Legal research.
Dockets and briefs.
Property law.
Contract.
Litigation.
The rule of law.
The rule of law.
The rule of law.
Hallworth, New Jersey, the Placemaker Poet's home for the next 2 years. But what if?
What if?
What if?
What if?
What if?
The Placemaker Poet had never moved in with Uncle Denman and Aunt Betsy. What if instead he had rented an apartment in Lower Manhattan, avoiding a 1-hour journey requiring train, water ferry, and 8-block walk to class each day? What if he had never discovered Hallworth, New Jersey, or Forest Hills, Queens? Breathtaking examples of planned neighborhoods emerging from farmland and all a part of the Garden City movement. Sources of inspiration for visionary discussions between uncle and nephew about the possibilities of a future city beautiful. The history of Coral Gables may never have been written. Yet it was a difficult time for a Floridian in Manhattan, especially at Christmas.
Hey, buddy. You think you can lend me a cigarette?
Walking alone through the streets of New York, he had to concede to the great contradiction between progress and poverty.
Please, I just need some change to buy my baby some food.
He saw the other side of New York, the underbelly of its festive, inexhaustible spirit, the dark, soulless energy that huddled on street corners.
Please, my mother is ill and we're starving at home. Do you have any spare change?
A dispossessed people who had come to Gotham seeking opportunity, only to find struggle and neglect beneath the towering monoliths of wealth and power. At this point, the Placemaker Poet had decided that his future city would never suffer the same indignities. Such dark thoughts were a prelude to an even darker time at home.
Mr. Merrick! Mr. Merrick! Urgent telegram.
Thank you.
George,
George!
George.
George.
you must come home.
Home!
Home.
Home.
Your father's not well.
Well!
Well.
Well.
He needs you here.
Here!
Here.
Here.
Come, dear son.
Son!
Son.
Son.
As soon as you can.
Can!
Can.
Can.
It is urgent.
Urgent!
Urgent.
Urgent.
Little time is left.
Life without a father. A ship without a rudder, a sail without the wind. The soul of Reverend Solomon Priestley Merrick no longer urging us forward, even as he struggled with debilitating depression and anxiety. I fell into an inescapably empty space. Father was so young at 52. Was I still so young at 22? Freedoms removed and a desire to write quite dashed. All that lay before me were the duties of family, of ownership. Working for one's own father brought a certain reward, but to assume ownership of what he had successfully accomplished and not to fail.
Rowing,
Sowing.
Planting.
Selling.
land management,
Investment.
Acquisition.
Investment.
Or work.
Investment.
mergers,
Investment.
New offices.
Investment.
Markets.
Investment.
more subdivisions,
Investment.
Designers.
Investment.
Architect.
Investors.
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 investors,
Investors.
To his utter dismay, arriving home, the Placemaker Poet had discovered that his family's fortune had grown to
$312,000,
$172.
And
92 cents.
grapefruit,
560 acres.
peppers.
120 acres.
eggplant,
16 acres.
Onions.
10 acres.
okra,
1.5 acres.
all due in part to the mercurial genius of Grandpa Fink, whose advice had helped Solomon Merrick establish a financial security that allowed his son to continue the dream. A new home. Designed by his mother, it stood out against the barren backwoods. To the Placemaker Poet, it was an enchanting castle, fit for a queen. Althea affectionately referred to it as among the pines, but her husband promptly extinguished any sentiment, renaming the house Coral Gables. How is it possible, Mr. Delancey?
How is what possible, Mr. Merrick?
Teach me.
Teach you what, Mr. Merrick?
Teach me how to build with coral.
Well, first you must learn to break your back. That test you have taken and passed with flying colors. Then you need a pick and a mattock and a lot of endurance. Not all coral stone can be used as building material. Oolite limestone. There's coral rock and there's coral stone. Once you can recognize the correct material, it must be prized out from beneath the ground, often ensnared in the roots of pine and palmetto. Then, using grit and patience, you saw the rock by hand into smaller blocks. The mortar, a mixture of limestone and sand, each block shaped by hand and fitted one by one. The human eye being nature's plumb line.
But the tones, the hues, it's magical. It's almost luminous. How do you achieve such a spectacular effect?
Mother Nature. It comes from within the rock. No one can take credit for that, Mr. Merrick. The gentle agent of the coral reminds us of our history. The material reminds us of the mystery of its creation.
This is the dream, Mr. Delancey. This is the vision. This coral rock. This is the magic that will deliver our city beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Delancey.
I will be your way shower, Mr. Merrick. I will guide you on your way, have no fear. But now, it's time to plan it out. Now, Mr. Merrick, it's time to plan and to be.
Love and war. Did it ever cross the Placemaker Poet's mind that love and war intersect? In Europe, the assassination of an archduke lit the tinderbox between Germany and Austria. However, favoring a position of neutrality, President Wilson allowed life in America to continue unabated. Excuse me? Well, I'm not really... Well, you may have to leave me. If you feel embarrassed at any moment, we can stop. So, how's life treating you these days in New Jersey? The model school, yes, I have heard. Very progressive. How are your teachers? Well, don't take it personally. What? Drink? Oh, no, never. The Merricks are not only abolitionists, Miss Peacock, we are also abstentionists. We all sign the Declaration of Never Ever. I hear you're taking trigonometry and philosophy next semester. Oh, well, it is important to accept a challenge. Just don't be too hard on yourself. Math teachers can be pitiless when it comes to Greek reasoning. So I assume with all your studying, you don't have too much time for company. Oh, is that so? Why, yes, they do all seem to be looking at us. Or should I say, looking at you. I should have known to whom I was being drawn. Yet there she was, Eunice Isabella Peacock.
Attractive.
Bright.
Sophisticated.
Daring.
The daughter of a prominent pioneer family, gushing with confidence, and with an insatiable love for animals of all species. She even nurtured a pet deer. She had also suitors in abundance from up and down the East Coast. What was a man to do in the face of such fierce competition? I guess you read my mind. Join the race, right? Yes. From her mother's side, she inherited the Bahamian Comte temperament. And from her father's side, Anglo-Saxon audacity.
Groaning.
Pining.
Lamenting.
Please.
The Placemaker Poet did all in his power to wrestle Eunice from a groundswell of eligible suitors.
Letters.
Telegrams.
Postcards.
Poetry.
Brown eyes of fair Hispania. Black hair of Indy Isle. Inheriting of old Britannia, not your languorous Latin smile, but your stubborn, willful spirit, your spunky, saucy style. Sweet lips of kisses Elysian, more fragrant than perfume Vantine. Chic grace of essence Parisian, hot temper that most matches mine. True heart, filled with love that is precious. Why, you are my Valentine.
And late night dates and luxury roadsters.
Courting her with his fanciful ideas of his city beautiful, her appearance in his life was the fuel that motivated his poetic mind into a frenzy of placemaking visions. She finally capitulated. They married. The Placemaker Poet felt that he had entered heaven. But as he threw himself more into his work, she grew less enthralled with his quixotic dreams. It is true that I failed to give her the attention to which she felt entitled. We are social beings. There's no denying that fact. We do all that we can to avoid loneliness. Some seek distraction and pleasure. Others turn to work and ambition. She hungered for the thrill of a more sophisticated life and began taking regular trips north, sometimes months at a time. To the Placemaker Poet, Eunice became forever unattainable. I found myself referring to her in letters as Dear Mrs. Merrick. Determined to win her validation, the Placemaker Poet hurled himself back into his work with a meteoric intensity. His goal now was to bring together what would be called in years later the Dream Team. He had the vision, but the plans, design, and execution fell on other shoulders.
Demon Fink, artist and illustrator.
Phineas Pace, artist and architect.
George H. Fink, architect.
Frank Button, landscape artist and arborist.
And the remarkable,
The extraordinary.
the exemplary,
Auctioneer for an extra long.
Edward Dodd Dammers!
Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly overwhelming to see so many dream seekers gathered here on the front lawn of Mr. Merrick's enchanting residence, all within the financial means of the middle-class homeowner. I suspect many of you are first-time home buyers from up and down the illustrious coast of this great city, state of Florida, and from all across our great nation. As a way of marking this unparalleled moment, I, Edward Doc Dammers, will dispense with my signature cigar. So that I may focus entirely upon the wishes and needs of our august visitors, making sure that not a single soul departs without having bought, in the very least, a modest plot of land upon which to build the home of your dreams. Let me repeat, Mr. Merrick is offering this property to the middle-class homeowner. He leaves luxury home building to the likes of Mr. Carl Fisher and friends. And as a small token of our esteem and for your entertainment, laid out on various tables, we have some mementos to take for you to take home as a reminder of what will surely be an unrivaled moment in real estate history. and to sustain you on your week-long tour. We are happy to serve you with a drum roll, please. Grapefruit punch! Picked and squeezed from the trees of Mr. Merrick's own plantation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, right now, coming at you. Yes, very good. Is there anyone here from the women's temperance movement? Yes? No. Well, you'll be happy to know that not an ounce of alcohol has besmirched the taste of this ambrosial fruit. So that even the youngsters can participate in this little treat and perhaps put in a bit or two along the way, right? No youngsters? Thank you very much. I work alone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we have here right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have 1,600, there it is, 1,600 acres of land holdings, and with 1,200
Hey, Dammers! I heard you used to work for a circus. Is it true you work for P.T. Barnum?
Oh, no, not Barnum. A rival circus. And yes, you are right. I was their treasurer for a few years, but that was then, and this is now.
How is it you call yourself Doc Dammers? Are you really a doctor?
Well, I'm certainly glad you brought that up, young lady. I owned an optical shop in New England, and I was referred to as Doc by my customers.
Smells a whole lot like Dr. Fink's magic oil to me.
Well, there's no reason to be disrespecting Mr. Merrick's beloved Grandpa Fink. As we all know, he made a lot of money with his magic oil enterprise, and his self-conferred credentials only serve to augment the effectiveness of his medicine, and we are told worked miracles for many who were suffering from all kinds of ailments. That his growing wealth lifted up his grandson's life, and it is his grandson who is offering you now the opportunity of a lifetime here on the border of Florida's Magic City.
That's all right, Doc. We're okay with the name, and we're ready to do some land purchasing.
Well, that's the spirit. All right, then, let's get on with it, ladies and gentlemen. As the crowds dispersed, the Placemaker Poet stood and reflected on what had just transpired. None of the 5,000 who had gathered on the front lawn to bid, barter, and buy were colored or Negro. How could they have been? Ours was a nation in which southern states wrote their own rules. For a Bahamian and Negro, the vote and owning property were little else but a pipe dream. Yet, deep down in his heart, he felt that someday state laws would change, and that he would be permitted to move forward with his plan to create dedicated townships where Bahamian and Negro families could live dignified and respected lives. But he also knew something about the law, and that equality would be a long time coming. In the meantime, his vision for a city beautiful had to continue. Inspired by reading one book in particular, the Placemaker Poet's imagination was ablaze. Little did he realize that the narratives of Spanish life, with their rich and vibrant history of castles and conquest, ancient traditions and mythology, Moorish loges, plazas, courtyards, geometric landscaping, would eventually contribute to the fabled style of his City Beautiful. Perhaps there never was a monument more characteristic of an age and people than the Alhambra.
A rugged fortress without, a voluptuous palace within.
War frowning from its battlements, poetry breathing throughout the fairy architecture of its halls.
I am a garden adorned by beauty. My being shall know whether you look at my beauty, the noblest thing that has ever existed or will ever exist.
In the present day, when popular literature is running into the low levels of life and luxuriating on the vices and follies of mankind.
When the universal pursuit of gain is trampling down the early growth of poetic feeling and wearing out the verdure of the soul.
I question whether it would not be of service for the reader occasionally to turn to these records of prouder times and loftier modes of thinking.
And to steep himself to the very lips of old Spanish romance.
to steep oneself in old Spanish romance. That is the foundational inspiration for a city beautiful, an ideal city, but not just Spanish, but Moorish, Arabic, Italian, and of course, Cuban.
Would anybody like to dance along?
Yet as I danced, I looked at the ground beneath me. I began to speculate on the history that lies beneath our feet. At times I would make an escape to the Everglades, that mystical yet still uninhabited stretch of tropical wetland. There existed the possibility to draw developers, but the bigger question arose.
Move not the ancient landmark.
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 Where to build? Where to continue the dream?
Today, September 27th, we honor Miami's first inhabitants.
We acknowledge the land upon which we have gathered today.
We recognize the original homeland of the Tequesta and Seminole.
The Miccosukee and Calusa people.
We honor the generations of stewards and to those indigenous people who remain connected to this land.
Where do we continue the dream? On whose forgotten histories do we build the foundations of progress?
By the rise of a palm-grown highland, far out in the Everglades, in a mound on a jungle island, is a Seminole warrior laid. There, in the midst of a prairie, desolate, forgotten, lone, 'neath a mound in a land most dreary, the land he had thought his own.
The live oaks are growing around it. Their roots are deep in the mound. A palm that years ago founded reaches 60 feet up from the ground. A grave in the midst of a prairie. Palmetto scrub overgrown. In an isle in a land most dreary. A land he had thought his own.
Weighed down with a burden of sorrow, the Spanish moss draped in dank gray, and the sunbeams filtering borrow the dullness of a storm-darkened day. On the isle where the cocoa palm tosses, he lies forgotten and lone, his grave overhung by the mosses of the live oaks he had thought his own.
Of that time, of the harsh awaking, of their bitter unmerited wrong, of the steady insidious taking, of the struggle so hopeless and long, and the wind sighs through the mosses, with palms high overgrown, breathing a sob of a people's losses, the loss of the land they had thought their own.
In the shade of a palm-grown highland, in the mystical Everglade, 'neath a mound of a hammock island, is a Seminole warrior laid. In the midst of the vista of grasses, desolate, forgotten, lone, and the wind that continually passes sweeps the land he had thought his own.
Over whose sacred and forgotten history do we lay the foundations of progress? All we can do in later years is acknowledge that where we sit, where we live, was once land that belonged to an indigenous people. This was the moment. The impetus that would propel vision into mission for the planning and construction of the Golden Gate community and the McFarland homestead for his Bahamian and Negro workers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Florida's Land Boom! We have reached that point in today's event where we would like to ask Mr. Merrick to kindly take a seat amongst the audience and savor some of the institutional, cultural, and architectural advances of the last 5 years. Maestro, please. Section, minimum down payment, yours for the asking, buy now.
And mingled with the perpetual screeching of motor horns.
Tahiti Beach, palm, sand, sun, minimum down payment, yours for the taking, buy now.
1,000 automatic riveters poured out their deafening music.
The Biscayne Bay section, 5,000 homes, minimum down payment, yours for the asking, buy now.
1,000 drills and hammers and winches added to the insane chorus.
The Venetian Village, prime home, selling fast, minimum down payment, yours for the taking, buy now.
Hatless, coatless men rushed about the blazing streets.
The Douglas section, a dream neighborhood, minimum down payment, yours for the asking, buy now.
Their arms full of papers.
The French Village, the height of culture, selling fast, minimum down payment, yours for the taking, buy now.
Perspiration pouring from their foreheads.
The Riviera section, Mediterranean bliss, minimum down payment, yours for the asking, buy now.
Every shop seemed to be combined with real estate.
The Pioneer Village, experience the height of culture, feel the early days, minimum down payment, yours for the taking, buy now.
At every doorway, crowds of young men were shouting.
Lejeune Road, live the high life, prime real estate, minimum down payment, yours for the asking, buy now.
And speech-making, thrusting forward papers.
The Deering land sale, build your dream home, minimum down payment, yours for the taking, buy now.
Proclaiming to heaven the unsurpassed changes which they were offering
To make a fortune.
Oh, okay, please, let's stop there for a moment, Paul, if we can stop the land boom for just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will allow me to draw your attention to the images on the 2 screens. We are sitting here reflecting on these magnificent buildings and feeling so much pride at the expansion of our city beautiful. But just for a moment, let us reflect on the Negro workers and those from all parts of the Caribbean, toiling through storm, droughts, floods, even fires, striving to meet a developer's deadline. They struggle to make sure that homeowners and investors have constructs ready for closing by a contracted date. Each day they prove to be trustworthy and diligent. Their contributions to what we have today, to the very city in which we live, makes them the true placemakers. We are merely the poets and visionaries, but they are the true placemakers of our dreams. In just 5 years, Miami's population exploded from 49,000 to over 100,000, and with it came an unrivaled demand for land and building materials. The price of rail transport soared, and so not being able to meet the overwhelming demand, Flagler's own system placed an embargo on all deliveries and adding insult to injury. on January 10, 1926, blocking the entrance to the port of Miami was the capsizing of the Prince Valdemar, a 241-foot steel-hulled schooner that was set to become Miami's first floating hotel. A chain of cargo vessels carrying building materials, furniture, home goods was stranded out to sea for 6 weeks. 100, just like that. 100 ships with over 45 million feet of lumber and other materials were stranded. And then,
September 18th.
1926.
Storm makes landfall.
Surge in excess of 11 feet.
Winds 135 miles per hour.
4,721 homes destroyed.
9,100 damage.
25,000 homeless.
Estimated damages 75 million.
372 casualties.
Rumors from lip to lip.
Through the blackness of the tropical night.
Another storm was coming.
A tidal wave was predicted.
Smallpox.
Typhoid fever.
Men shot for refusing to work.
Do not believe the rumors.
gray purple dusk, behind the wrath-swept hill, an outlimbed, broken oak, black, lone, once tall, dear tragic figure, bowed by awful will, transfixed against the fading fateful pall. Like most communities, Miami has experienced its share of dissenting concerns. But then we are all brought together through the great equalizer, collective loss. How many of us have experienced or lived through a hurricane? Or maybe not you personally, but through your family's history, the loss, the terror, the emotionally bankrupting recovery. It is at times such as this that our own unique and personal tragedies coalesce, and oft neglected humanity is felt, and all anxiety is put aside. What is a hurricane? But the Lord of misrule, causing mayhem and destruction at every turn, while delivering financial nightmares. Hurricanes know no economic, religious, or racial boundaries. Wealthy and poor, black and white, loss unites us. Yet storms can be harbingers for change, an opportunity to reassess the value of life, the meaning of being. A chance to look back and take stock of what once was and what is yet to come. And so, in spite of the tapping of nails into the Placemaker Poet's coffin, he carried on in his characteristically optimistic manner, determined to wage the second coming of land boom advertising, an all-out appeal to come and see and to join the Progress Week campaign. Few were so convinced as in the past. The writing was on the wall.
Properties raised.
Investors lost.
Sales withdrawn.
Profits perish.
I should have resisted. It is all too easy to erase reality. There is no point in living in denial. To have created and been appointed my own city's first commission. To have been given that privilege. And to have disrespected the position by a dereliction of duty. They had every right to take it from me. I had lost the Midas touch. $40 million pledged. $20 million in debt. Unable to raise capital. Promises made, promises broken.
Investors turned away. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. A childless marriage. Oh, Eunice, how have I failed thee? Let me count the ways. The city beautiful was my child. But like some overzealous, proud, and protective father, I knew no limits in nurturing, spoiling, and idolizing her. She is still here. There. But I lost her really.
Coral Gables Corporation.
Coral Gables Securities Company.
Coral Gables Resale Company.
Coral Gables Construction and Supply Company.
Coral Gables Hotel Corporation.
Coral Gables Rapid Transit Corporation.
Coral Gables Consolidated Corporation.
7 subsidiary corporations, each created in the hopes of breathing life back into the city beautiful, each collapsing under the weight of its own hubris. Yet, those relentless days of land-grubbing in his youth had ingrained in him a survival instinct, and like his father before him, he was determined to claw his way back into relevance, even at the expense of his own health. And so, to our final steps, from placemaker to postmaster. But not without a final mad dash to the finish line. As a member of the planning board, I floated a proposition to loan $4.5 million government bonds to reinvest in the city beautiful. A decision based solely on the faith of one man, Henry L. Doherty. I put all my trust in Doherty, a man of untold wealth and influence, and in whom I must admit I saw a mirror image of myself. A self-made visionary who had thrown a lifeline to the University of Miami when it mattered most, and who had gained my trust. What goes around comes around. 4 years passed, fortified by the belief that Henry L. Doherty would invest. As my belief grew, so did others. And as Doherty held out, the banks collapsed. America sank into the Great Depression. Yet, to the collective relief of business owners, homeowners, artists, and artisans, President Roosevelt signed into law numerous bills averting the nation's downfall.
The FERA.
The Federal Emergency Relief Fund.
The CCC.
The Civilian Conservation Corps.
The PWA.
The Public Works Administration.
The WPA.
The Works Progress Administration.
The FAP.
The Federal Arts Program.
And from my position in Federal Building downtown, I continued to submit plans and proposals for a renewed future. The City Beautiful was once again open for business. I could again be the way-shower for my original dream, regulating and enforcing the ideals of a City Beautiful, based on the examples of Haworth and Forest Hills. With Grandpa Fink looking over one shoulder, and his preacher father looking over the other, the Placemaker Poet seized on the opportunity to put to right a lingering injustice, deeply worried about the slowly eroding conditions of working families, and willing to face hostile opposition from within his own circle. He set out to propose a plan to create townships where Negro and Bahamian would find dignity and respect. It was his way of making a step, an incremental step forward toward racial equality in a world ensnared by Jim Crow laws.
Merrick. Merrick. Speech.
Thank you.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall use separate beaches.
Gentlemen, today 1/3 of our present population is Negro. When we will have 1 million people, we will have at least 1/4 of a million Negroes. Today, this 1/3 of our present citizenry are effectively denied water and water use. Now collectively as well as individually, we cannot receive fairness unless we give fairness.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall be separated on public transportation.
It is proposed, for Miami at least, that this unfair condition be remedied. It is proposed to give fairness to this deserving 1/3 of our citizenry. It is proposed that a great bay beach be established and forever be preserved for Negro use.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall be educated in separate schools.
With regard to the issue of overcrowding, the proper model for our Negro housing problem is to be found in Nassau, in Grant's Town. Here is a population of over 110,000 Negroes housed under ideal tropical conditions. Each plot is 1/4 of an acre to an acre. Each plot is covered like a thick jungle with a wide variety of tropical fruits, producing 1/2 of each family's living. This is a self-respecting community that has been crimeless for over 50 years.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall be assigned separate seating in theaters and clubs.
Grant's Town is the model of which is proposed 3 such towns be established north, central, and south in the Miami County area. It should be the goal of this plan to be completely accomplished within 20 years.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall use separate restrooms.
This is the most essential fundamental of our great balanced city of 1 million.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall eat in separate restaurants.
With this must come a county-wide, county-controlled transportation system whereby our Negroes and other workers can be transported back and forth at a reasonable rate.
Henceforth, all colors and white shall play in separate playgrounds.
Finally, let me here say that our Planning Council has requested and insistently pushed for the present legislature to give our county commission certain powers enabling them to initiate and control some of the things that I am suggesting in this talk. So far, we have not succeeded. This must succeed.
Henceforth, all colored and white residents shall pray in separate churches.
My words fell on stony ground. Walls were built. The heart of the movement to integrate black and white fell away. Yes, I could have done more. We can always do more in retrospect. Yet even divested of civic leadership, I could not sit idly by and remain silent with regard to the needs of the workers on whose backs we had built our architectural legacy. We developed beyond the legislated color line. We moved boundaries to relieve a community suffocating on neglect and overcrowding. We proposed housing to give them back dignity and respect. No regrets. No apologies. So despite his change in circumstance, the Placemaker Poet's views on Miami's future were still welcomed by Miami's Realty Board. And so, he continued to submit his ideas. And here we have the Placemaker Poet becoming the postmaster. What do any of us know about being a postmaster? Letters, stamps, parcels, postcards, packages. Well, yet, who would have ever thought that a 13-year-old boy from Duxbury, Massachusetts, would, some 39 years later, register over 15,000 undocumented migrants from all parts of the world? And the mail, well, it is not without its significance. Each letter demanding urgent attention, while emotional sentiments are laid bare on a postcard. The position of postmaster was poetic. And with it came the opportunity to reduce inequality between men and women by mandating a policy of equal pay.
My dear.
My dearest.
My dearest beloved.
My dearest beloved soulmate.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we move into the final scene of tonight's project, would you indulge us for a moment? When you came in, you found a little card, a postcard, and an envelope and a pen on your seats. Would you mind putting them on your laps now? So a postcard, as you find them, you'll notice that a postcard has just so much room. Limited real estate, if you will. Now, this brief moment, these are compressed ideas that become brief poetry, correct? There are some things about our communities where we live that we'd like to change, but what are things that our community has brought to us? Enjoyment. What is the joy that your community has given to you that you would share with someone else? How would you express that joy in 3 brief lines of poetry? Now, if you wouldn't mind, write down your thoughts on these cards. And don't worry, it doesn't have to rhyme. No rush, but when you're done, if you wouldn't mind taking your postcard and putting it in the envelope and sealing it tightly, please. When you're ready, just raise your postcard and our chorus will come by with a basket. You can drop it right in. The objective is, what is the joy that your community has brought to you, and how would you express that to someone else, someone who may not know your community? You may find it difficult to do it in 3 lines. No cheating.
No worries.
I'll take this for myself. All right, has everyone turned in their homework? Miss Althea is asking. I think we're done. Thank you very much. I ripple the fronds of the coconut palms as I join the voice of the sea, the somnolent swell of the mystical songs that I breathe from the quivering tree.
Celestial harmony, breath sounds.
I hushed the cries of the wandering crane.
Out over the shimmering lea.
And the murmuring moan of the faraway main.
I said what I said, and I did what I did. I succeeded and failed along the way. While we may not all have the capacity to be poets and placemakers, we do have the potential to be way showers, makers of significant places in the human heart. And as the sun sets in the west, and the song and the southern wind dies away, let the spirit be at peace in the yesteryear of an ideal city, a garden city, a city forever celebrated as a city beautiful.
And the hum of the hovering bee. Breath sounds change to faint buzz. I leap then to the crest of the towering pine, and I sing of the life that I see.
operating lights is from the School of Music at FIU, and she has never worked lights in her life before, and she is working a manual dimmer board, which is almost unheard of in today's theater. And so she has this rare experience of being able to work emotionally with the actor on stage to bring those fade ups and those fade outs and those specials and so on, working with the actor and making it happen as opposed to a machine that's been, you know, pre-programmed and then you hit go and it's doing it all for you. So I think Clementine's having an incredible experience. Thank you to Paul, who puts our video. I'd like to thank the Coral Gables Museum and especially Elvis Fuentes, the